I thought I would turn my attention to the cabinet for a bit. This is the cabinet for the one I got off of eBay and received in the mail fairly recently. This is the one that I'm calling the second one I'm working on, the one that had the corroded, rusty chassis that I had to replace all the resistors in. The reason I bought this, even though I've already got a few, is that all my other cabinets are damaged to one degree or another. And this one, although it looks filthy and there's some minor abrasions, there are no cracks or chips that I can see. So we're going to see what we can do to clean this up. So a few things. One, this channel plate is made out of an early type of plastic, and it's very, very common. In fact, it's almost guaranteed it's going to be somewhat shrunk and warped, maybe to the point where it's much worse than this. This is actually one of the better ones I've ever seen, which is surprising considering this seems to have been stored in a damp environment, and you'd think it would have been in worse condition. And it is held on, I think maybe by more of those damn speed nuts or something like that, or maybe it's just pushed on. And then there is speaker, which I've taken out, and again more friggin' speed nuts pushed onto bakelite pegs for that. So the speaker attaches to this sort of masonite-y material that's attached to the bakelite with speed nuts, as was a screen cover, which miraculously came out very easily. It's nice to get all the stuff out, the channel plate cover, the speaker, and everything, so you can really clean this, because this will absorb any type of moisture cleaning products you might use on this. I mean, it's nice to, for the very first thing to do with bakelite is wash it with some mild warm water detergent, just to get the bulk of the crud off. Well, you don't want to get this wet. Also can ruin the label. You could just let the interior go. This one is pretty filthy though, so I think I'll at least go over it with a damn cloth to get the worst of it out. I don't think I'm going to try messing with this. I don't want to break one of these pegs off. And I guess there is a special tool that will kind of pry up these metal prongs and help you get this off. I don't have one. I don't want to cut it off with Dremel tools or any of that. It's there, it's intact, it's in good shape, and just going to leave it alone. I'll just work around it. So the cabinet, yeah. So although bakelite is pretty chemically impervious, I don't use anything aggressive to clean it just because I don't think it needs it, and I don't want to take any chances. I've heard that using some kind of strong ammonia-based product could cause problems, or something that's really caustic, like using undiluted simple green or spray 9 or something, and it's just way overkill for this. Everybody seems to have their favorite product for polishing bakelite. I've talked about it, various things many times in the past. Basically, use a mild abrasive. Car products work well, scratch out, or any other the other various things to kind of buff out a car's finish to make it look better and remove minor blemishes. Novus number 2, I use it for so many other things. It's kind of like when your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, I think the expression goes. So I tend to use this on a lot of stuff to polish metal and plastic and bakelite. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's what you typically see me use because I've got a lot of it, and I just, I'm very familiar with its properties and how it works, and I think it works great on bakelite. The big challenge with this cabinet, I did one of these a few years back, it was a black version, is the speaker grill. I don't got any tips or shortcuts for you. It's tedious. Maybe use a toothbrush or something to clean all these cavities out. But man, I mean, once you get into the polishing compound, it gets into all the nooks and crannies, and man, get out the Q-tips and the toothpicks and just go at it. Put on your favorite movie, TV show, and just start working away at it. And the sides are annoying too because I got these pinstripes. The bakelite cabinets have far less detail on it, so this is one of the most challenging things I've ever done bakelite-wise cleaning, because there's so many little recesses and grooves and nooks and crannies and so on. On the other one, I did repaint the recess lettering. It looks pretty good on this one, so I don't think I'll need to do that. Again, I'd like to get this off just so I can clean around it. But because of the fragile nature, man, I can kind of feel the tension in this. Like the edges are curled up and it's kind of shrunk, and I got a bad feeling if I try to mess with the fasteners on the other side or get this off, it's going to damage. And I think it is just 4 pegs that are pressed into this. Ugh, man. Again, that's one of the best ones I've seen. I don't want to break it. It kind of feels like maybe somebody wrapped some Scotch tape around the pegs and then pushed it in, and that gave it a little bit of extra grip, because there's some kind of like plastic film around these pegs. So I'm just going to start cleaning it and leave it alone for now. So I'm going to get myself a little bit of dish detergent, dilute it with some warm water, and grab a rag and clean this off to get started. Well, after a bit of cleaning, it really doesn't look any better at all. But while it's wet, it looks pretty darn nice. And the one bit of advice I can definitely give you is don't go crazy. Don't start wet sanding and stuff. Yes, I have done that once or twice in the past on cabinets that were really, really far gone. They had a lot of scuffs and scratches. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and post your favorite techniques and products. But I've been doing this for a while, and I've kind of probably seen and heard all of them, and I know everybody's got their favorite product again. By no means is what I'm going to use the best way, the only way. It's just what I've got on hand, and it's worked for me. A few other tips that I won't be using on this is if it was really dull but smooth, I've heard stain can work quite well to bring some color back into it. So for your typical reddish brown mahogany, use something like a red mahogany stain to make it look nice. Wax can certainly help too. Basically anything that will kind of make it look wet and shiny. Again, car products tend to work well, but see, as soon as this dries, man, this is just really dull. I don't think it's sun faded though, because I've got some, and that's one thing that can definitely damage these, like visibly, is sun. I had one cabinet where accidentally I'd kept it covered. I knew it was near a window, but I had a cloth over it, but one little edge of it got exposed to the light for months. And it wasn't just dull, but the surface actually felt rough. Like the UV was actually damaging the bakelite surface. So I do suggest you keep it out of direct sunlight. Alright, so that's what we got after cleaning. Okay, so there are some scratches in the back that are a bit deeper back here. This, I think, will buff out. That might just be some surface crud that's requiring a little bit more to get out than my cleaning product is loosening up. A little bit more gouges here and here. And that's something that wax can help with. It'll fill in the minor defects and buff that out. And again, if it's deep enough. So, bakelite, very briefly, it's like a phenolic resin, heat cured. I don't think I have that quite right, but basically it's one of the earliest thermoset type plastics. It's made out of like formaldehyde and sawdust and some nasty stuff. But in the end, you end up with something that has a really shiny, pretty, and tough surface, but it's not that thick, and inside it's kind of pulpy and dull. So you see these scratches, and it looks kind of like dullish in there. Yeah, I mean, like if you were to sand through this, you'd be left with something that's really dull and kind of gritty and not nice at all. And that's why I say be conservative when you're going at it, because once that layer's gone, you really can't bring it back. Then you got to talk about staining it and maybe clear coating it, which is something I've never done. I know other guys who have when they were left with no choice, like with lacquer. And I mean, sure, if I sprayed this with clear lacquer, I'm sure it would, you know, some high gloss lacquer, I'm sure it would look great. But it might peel, flake off, and you're going to have to, you know, buff it out, all that. You get orange peel and all the same stuff when you know, clear coat anything. And who wants to mess with all that when, you know, ideally you've got a good surface just as it is. So on cabinets that I got that are in really good shape and don't require a lot of maintenance, I do like to put some type of protective wax on it. Basically a good car wax, carnauba wax, something that's tough. Not like a beeswax, because that's kind of sticky and it'll attract dust. But even like Johnson paste wax, floor wax. In fact, I had a buddy over and we restored one of his radios, and that's what we used. This bottle of Novus is getting kind of empty, so Novus, it's a fine abrasive polish. Nothing particularly magical about it, other than it's widely available and works well. And we're just going to go on a circular motion, and we're just going to do one rough pass, because it will do wonders. Even just doing one pass will make this look dramatically better. And then we'll get a little more into it on areas that need it. Basically, you do this circular motion, buff it, let it dry to a haze, and then buff out. Bakelite. And yeah, you will get brown looking residue on this. Basically, that's some of the bakelite you've just abraded off with this, well, fine abrasive. Still looks like crap. Well, and then we start buffing, and that's when the magic starts to happen. And I know there's some guys do not like Novus bakelite for the reasons you can kind of start to see here, where it gets streaky. So some areas look better than others. But I found that if I do a few passes and kind of use the right amount of material and remove it in a certain way, it works out pretty well for me. So I know with the lighting down here, it may not be the greatest. It gets kind of reflective too, but it's looking a lot better in this area, and overall it's looking a lot better. Much richer color, and I just barely did any work at all. I hardly used any Novus on it, so I think after another pass it's really going to be looking nice. And I had just briefly shown us scratch out. This works fine, well too, and I may switch to that because this bottle of Novus is run out. I'll just as soon save it for the final step. Something else I sometimes use for the final step, although it's pretty expensive stuff, is semichrome metal polish. And in general, metal polishes work quite well on this. I know a lot of guys used Brasso in the past, but they changed the formulation and it doesn't work so well anymore. The old stuff came in a metal can. That's the stuff you'd want to use. I've never got my hands on it, so I cannot speak to it at all. So I just don't know. I probably never will. Alright, so that's after the second pass. Lift this out a bit. I really should be putting on a lot more material than I have. That's why it's getting really blotchy. Ideally with the Novus you put on a pretty healthy amount so that when it dries there is visibly like a thin layer of it left on here, and then you can get something to buff out. That's why this is looking really streaky. So anyways, let's use the scratch out. Let's see how that goes. Again, fine abrasive and suspension. I always figure anything that's safe on a car is pretty safe on bakelite, because after all, it's not like you want to remove the paint off your car. You're just trying to get out minor blemishes and make it look nicer. So this is the kind of amount of material you want to use. So you got plenty to work with. Make sure I get the edges good. Oh, and the reason I'm starting with the easiest, by far the easiest surface, is that I'm hoping that if this turns out well, it will kind of inspire me to tackle the not so fun parts of it. And no, it's not that great. I mean, it's hard to find one that is. I got this at a reasonable price, so I'm ahead of the game. Alright, now I think we can really start seeing this is looking quite nice. So was that all about 10 minutes of work? And it's looking considerably better. So basically all the dirt's gone at this point, and most of the dullness is gone, and what we're left with are the scratches, which are not really going to come out. I will do another pass or two and then call it good enough and move on to the other sides in the front. As far as the scratches go, they will end up trying a little stain on them, and then we'll see how good the wax can do to fill them in and make them less visible. Now that the top is looking a lot better, I decided to move on to one of the sides. Trying to good shape, and there's a bit of paint splatter, and yeah, there are a few nicks and dings here and there, but no big deal. It's polishing up quite nicely, but now is where the tedious bit starts in. So I can get most of this off with a rag, but to really clean this, you need something like a toothpick, and you gotta go into the grooves. Still, not that bad. Nothing that bad compared to the speaker grill in the front. So, finish this up pretty quickly. This is just after one pass. The sides, because they're more protected than the top, are far less dull. They were just mainly dirty. So it'll probably take me, I don't know, maybe half an hour to do each side, and then finally I'll get around to the front. Boy, look how nice that is. Some very pretty bakelite. Bakelite, however you want to say it. Alrighty, one side down. Is it perfect? No. But it's not going into the Smithsonian Institute. Life's too short. It's a heck of a lot better than it was. I'm not striving for perfection. I just want it to look presentable with a modest amount of effort. So let's go to the other side. I think you can see the difference. This side has not had the treatment yet, so it's filthy and grimy and dull. So let's see what we can do on this side. And yes, if you have a mechanical polisher, by all means use it, but again, be careful, like a bonnet you can put onto an electric drill and get some polishing compound. Just don't leave it sit too long, don't be too aggressive, don't burn through a shiny layer. Plus you get a little exercise this way. And now for the front. So far I got maybe an hour invested in this. And I expect I'll spend maybe a couple hours on this front. After all, not only is it the most tedious part, but it's the most visible, so it's worth the extra effort. This one's in really good shape. So this top bit here, it's easy. Well, there are some light scratches. I thought it was a little bit better than that, but that's pretty minor stuff. So, these grills, so the ribs in between, that's not too bad. Let's go over it. To get down in there. Of course they're filthy because they just attract dust and dirt. Here's a better look at what I'm talking about. So, we need to get down into each one of these cells, and they are really filthy. Tedious for sure, but making progress. I have no tricks, I have no tips, other than patience. So I squirt a little bit of Novus into each of the recesses, and then I work it around with a Q-tip to kind of polish it a bit, and then I start working it out. It's not quite as horrible as I made it out to be. Takes me about 5 minutes to do each row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 rows. It'll take me about 45 minutes probably to get this completely done. Just switch to clean under the Q-tip periodically. Maybe I'll do this in half an hour. I'm starting to get a little bit faster at it. And this leftover goo that comes out around the top, just use that to polish around the surrounding area. Which, yes, does knock some more back into the recesses. So, one more pass cleaning them out. Do a little twist in the corners. And again, I got lucky with this one. That's kind of why I bought it, because I suspected that under the filth it was in pretty good shape. That's what I mean by getting lucky, is that it actually isn't requiring all that much effort to get this looking really nice. And I guess the final thing I'll have to do is a Q-tip to really get into those corners. Alright, that's basically 2 rows done. A few more to go. Here's a look from the other side of things. Let's do this. I started doing it a little bit last night. That's when the couple inner ones are done. Also started going over this channel plate a little bit. Only issue with this so far is that the polishing compound gets down to the grooves. Suppose yet again a toothpick will help with that. Get my hand out of the way there so you can see a little bit better maybe. So basically slosh it around, swirl it around. Well, no, I did not clean these at all, actually. I kind of figure that fine dust and dirt that's in there just mixes in with the polishing compound and actually helps clean things a little bit. Alright, now we start working it out with a clean end. Always keep it moving too to some of that polishing action. These are so protected though, I mean, aside from getting dusty. I do kind of wonder about that a bit. Why are these quite so bad? It makes me wonder, was this set for a while stored face up? So why would so much dirt get down into something like that? Unless it had been. But it doesn't seem to be sun faded or dull or rough or anything like that. So like I was saying earlier, the UV can break down the surface and make it rough. In which case you do need to do a bit of polish to get it smooth again. So just like that. Almost done. I'm using a microfiber cloth, by the way, for the buffing here. Oops. Got snagged a little bit on this channel plate. Gotta be careful with that. Somebody did make a reproduction of sorts, but it's actually a sticker. It's not like an actual molded piece you can snap in. It's a sticker that you can just kind of apply over there. It's certainly better than nothing. And all you 3D printer advocates out there, or enthusiasts, sure, if you want to work up the 3D CAD drawings and whatnot, I'm sure you could print one out. Don't know if anybody has yet. And I know they're constantly improving it. One issue with 3D printing that I've seen so far is when you do a large flat surface like this, you're going to see fine marks from where the thread gets laid out and melted together. And it seems to always require a little bit of post cleaning, polishing, whatever, to get the defects out. Put that aside, seems like a pretty good solution. Probably a lot easier than making some kind of mold. Alright, I think another row is basically done. Some kind of crud there, I think that's just on the surface. Let's see if we can get that out. It's slowly coming off. And I cannot recall after going, yeah, that's a problem with getting into this hobby, and you get so many sets, especially when you get duplicates of the same one. It's hard to remember what's what. I can't remember if this set came with a full set of knobs or not. It's very common for the channel knob to be missing. Fine tuning as well. Because the fine tuning on this and perhaps the channel are unique to this model. A number of Admirals use knobs that look very similar, but these have a longer shaft. There's a really long shaft on that tuner. And the knob, the channel and fine tuning correspondingly also have a pretty long plastic shaft on them. The ones from the console models have shorter shafts, don't really fit on there properly. And so it goes. Take a little break from that, and let's see what we can do with this Admiral logo. Which is a little odd in that it's kind of like a separate insert. I wonder when they molded this, did they mold a recess? And this is a separate piece that they got glued in or something? Or is that just meant to be a little highlighting ring around it? Not sure. Like I said, the polishing compound gets down to the recesses. When I did this in another cabinet, I ended up putting in some paint. I took some white paint and put a little bit of yellow in it to age it a little bit, because pure bright white was just a little too much. But this one's in pretty good shape, so I just as soon try to clean out that polishing compound after the fact and not mess around with repainting anything. And I know I posted a still photo from this project as a little preview, and I already got a comment about Novus number 2, and somebody has trouble using it. Yeah, it's a little tricky. I think it all comes down to the technique. So to start out with, I just squirt some on, and I just keep going back and forth and back and forth. And if you just leave it like that or try to buff it out, it doesn't work. You end up with streaks and discolorations in foggy areas. You gotta do a final pass. I need to do more work here, but I want to give you some idea what I'm talking about. So for a final pass, you put it on a little bit thicker. Thicker than that, really. Got a fresh bottle, so I don't need to be so stingy with it. Just kind of glop it on there and let that dry thoroughly. Pause the camera while I wait for that. Okay, that's dried pretty well. It's been like 10 minutes. take a clean cloth and kind of attack it in short bursts. Rotate the cloth to a clean part. Do it again. Rotate again. And keep doing that. And look at that. No streaks. No splotches. And this isn't I invented. It actually says it on the back of the bottle, basically. And using a microfiber cloth and just getting the hang of it and knowing how much of this stuff to put on, and that's it. So practice a little bit, and I think you shouldn't have any trouble using Novus number 2 bakelite. Maybe this is a good place to wrap up this segment. I will continue polishing up the cabinets, not a whole lot left to do. Dig up a set of knobs, clean up the faceplate, start putting everything back together, and that's what you'll be seeing in the next installment.